Hello, Shemai, welcome back to Wales in the Movies. I'm Cloisio again to the iShed. Tonight, iShed reviews Prevenge, a movie shot entirely in Cardiff, written, directed by and starring Alice Lowe, Joanna Hartley, Gemma, Whelan and Kayvan, Novak. And here we are, and it's a beautiful day. I just don't understand it. So, confession time before we start. Until yesterday evening, I had never heard of any of the aforementioned actors or the writer, director and star Alice Lowe. But hopefully with a bit of Welsh exposure and with a bit of local Welsh love, these very talented crew members can all go on to bigger and greater things. Before the main review, I want to say that Prevenge is exactly the sort of project, well, not quite exactly, but it's definitely the sort of project that Wales in the Movies was set up to focus on. Okay, it's not set, but it's all made and shot here in Wales, in Cardiff to be specific, and a lot of the filming locations will be very familiar and homely to anyone who spent a significant amount of time in the Welsh capital. But we'll get back to the Welsh stuff later on. Prevenge is the story of Ruth. She's a widower but also 7 months pregnant after her husband has recently died in a climbing accident. This is all explained with backstory in a very cinematic and in a very visual way, which I appreciated greatly. The premise for Ruth's character is pretty unique. Rather than accepting her ill fate as a single mum with the serenity and wisdom that realises total forgiveness, she decides to go on a motherfucking kill crazy rampage in a quest to get revenge on all the people she has perceived to have wronged her, including all the dudes that were involved in her husband's tragic aforementioned accident when they had to cut the rope. And there'll be a couple of links to that idea of cutting the cord later on in the movie, do you know what I mean? Ruth has become convinced that her unborn fetus is communicating to her from the womb and is actually telling her to do these evil deeds. Now, this is a very unique way of getting across the internal monologue and very interesting too. For this movie, not for one moment is a film which wants to concentrate on the touchy-feely, sentimental sides of nature and motherhood. As the lady herself says, nature's a bit of a cunt really, isn't it? But there you have basically the premise for the movie and you don't need much more than that. Woman, 7 months pregnant, recently become widowed, goes totally off her dial and decides to get revenge on everyone she's perceived to have wronged her in life, and she feels responsible for her husband's death with a fucking knife. The initial premise of Ruth the character may get you thinking of Frances McDormand's character Marge Gunderson in the Coen brothers movie Fargo, or perhaps maybe a good film of comparison is another UK film called Dead Man's Shoes starring Paddy Considine and directed by Shane Meadows. However, the movie I was thinking of most of all during this was the 1993 Joel Schumacher movie Falling Down with Michael Douglas playing a crazy guy called Defense. There's just something a little bit different but quite familiar about the internal monologue or maybe the internal dialogue that Ruth has before she's about to kill every single one of her victims. But there's something about the mission that she goes on, something about the bitterness that she feels that really got me thinking of Falling Down, which is a classic film by the way and the best thing Joel Schumacher ever did, hands down.
Yeah, and now you're gonna die wearing that stupid little hat. How does it feel? And
it's also quite unique to see a character and an actor, not to mention, who's 7 months pregnant playing the main character in what is basically a slasher film. And of course seeing a British stroke UK stroke Welsh slasher film is also a pretty unique concept.
What do you think this is? Like some kind of new initiative?
First and foremost, it's a fantastic premise for a character and a movie, and apparently reading the interviews was a way for the writer, director and star Alice Lowe herself to deal with the conflicting emotions of her own pregnancy, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this kid actually works out. You may love the movie, you may not love the movie. Personally, I really enjoyed myself, but whatever you think about it, it's a fantastic feat for a first-time director to write, star and also direct in your feature film debut while being 7 months pregnant. I mean, fuck me dead, fair play. Yes, that's not a cushion down Alice Lowe's jumper in the movie. She really was 7 months pregnant with her own child while filming this in 11 days. Mental. Now, I'm not exactly an expert in movie production. I've got a couple of little things made myself and I know that they take 100,000 phone calls, 100,000 emails, 100,000 conversations just to make something on a micro small level. This can go on for months, even years. So what I'm getting at here is Alice Lowe was 7 months pregnant while filming this thing, not while writing it, while actually filming it. So we're either talking about a stroke of extreme luck, some kind of perfect storm, or we're talking about something that was very, very well planned and calculated. But that's all I'm going to say on that matter. If I'm still alive in 20 years' time, it's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how this woman or how this man worked out as a result of watching this film and knowing that it's her or him in the room while Alice Lowe was filming it and writing it and making it a film about her catharsis, about being pregnant with this person. Get your Sigmund Freud right here at Wales in the Movies. Now, as the story builds up to a climax, it does become clearer as to her overall plan. But here's a few things about Prevenge movie that I personally really appreciated and thought elevated the film somewhat. First, I really appreciated the way the film tells its story in a visual manner and uses the language of movies and the language of film. Flashbacks are used, but they're used not in a lazy, redundant manner. The flashbacks here are used to give you the relevant amount of backstory that you need in order to work out what is going on. It's used in just the right amount and it works really, really well. Secondly, it has a minimalist script which suits the cinema genre. What allows for this are the dialogue scenes which Ruth shares with her unborn fetus and also with her very upbeat and quite amusing midwife played by Jo Hartley.
You can just start spurting milk from your boobs, like two rockets. It's like boom, boom, pow. It's quite magical.
Why are you telling me that?
These two relationships allow the rest of the film to flow visually in a way I really liked and I thought helped tell the story efficiently. And while we're on that subject, here's a wee clip of Alice Lowe on Film 4 discussing how the minimalist script kind of panned out while they were making the thing.
The script was 70 pages long, so I was quite scared that we didn't even have a feature film. But you know, I knew that there was lots of sequences in there which were visual, which was definitely what I wanted to do. You know, coming from a TV background, I'm like, well, people know that I can talk. But what people don't know that I want to do and aspire to is be a proper filmmaker that has visual sequences. I didn't want it to be a really dialogue-heavy film.
Also, the kills are brutal. Absolutely brutal. She's not fucking around. After the first couple of victims make you suspect that this could be a revenge tale purely against men, Ruth then mixes up her kill spree by going for a couple of women as well. And I think this is a really good move which helps put the focus of the story exactly where it should be. However, that said, the most brutal kill in the film is one made against a bit of an arsehole of a guy, but as a bloke I've never ever felt so compromised ever, and I've never squirmed in my cinema seat as much in my life. Ooh. Well, I've got to go on about a couple of bad things because I wouldn't be being balanced otherwise, would I? But there's no real bad things I've got to say about the movie itself. Like, I'm a person who stands by belief that domestic and industrial and urban United Kingdom is just a fundamentally uncinematic place. I mean, it's very hard to make modern, white, glossy IKEA interiors look cinematic, and it's also hard to make, you know, concreted over industrial estates sympathetic to an art form which is meant to convey the emotions of dreams and fantasies, you know what I mean? But this doesn't really affect the movie here. They do a very good job of making it look cinematic. Considering the locations and considering the length of the story, it doesn't feel like a TV movie, which is a big relief. Other than that, the second maybe dodgy thing is that there's no threat throughout the whole movie of police or punishment from the authorities. There's maybe one scene where the police are kind of hinted at, but you know, cinema is about suspension of disbelief. It's about heightened reality, and I think it was a wise move again by Alice Lowe. Yes, Cymru. Okay, well, this film was shot entirely in Cardiff, but one thing I did notice was that it doesn't seem to have the involvement of Film Cymru Wales, so they're clearly not a patron for this one. For every individual kill, the character of Ruth affects a kind of different UK regional or national accent, and there's one kill towards the end where she does affect the kind of southern Wales Rhondda twang. Now, the film is not set in Wales, heaven forbid, eh? But there are a couple of Welsh dragon flags included on a scene in St Mary Street, and they're pretty prominent in the film. You've got to look hard to miss the Welsh dragon. So, you know, well done Alice Lowe for putting that scene in, because for the UK audience, once you see that flag, you know that the movie is shot and therefore set in Cardiff. However, for viewers outside the United Kingdom, this will probably come across as a movie set in England. In terms of Cardiff locations, if you've ever been to Griff Rhys's bar Goody Hugh, you'll spot that interior location straight away. You'll also spot St Mary Street, as I've just mentioned. You should also spot the underpass that goes between the Hilton Hotel and the National Museum, and the church Eglwys Dewi Sant, which is near St Andrew's Crescent and Park Place, you should see in this scene as well. As for the flashback scenes, I can't tell exactly where they are. They're shot on the coast, so it's outside of Cardiff. I can't tell exactly where, but I'd probably say somewhere like Ogmore or Southern Down, which is a very popular filming location and got that real kind of epic cliffside feel to it. The most recognisable face for me amongst the cast was this guy who's called Kayvan Novak, and you may recognise from Christopher Morris's absolute classic movie Four Lions, and also he had a part in the movie Syriana with George Clooney and Matt Damon. Gemma Whelan can be found in the TV show Game of Thrones as a character called Yara Greyjoy. Am I saying that right? I'm sorry, I've never watched it. And also, interestingly for this Welshified geeks, Gemma Whelan appears in a movie called The Wolfman, which was a 2010 remake of an old classic black and white horror called The Wolfman, which was also, funnily enough, silently set in Wales. The original, not the remake, of course. Kate Dickie, the Scottish actor, was in Prometheus and also Red Road. And I can't go through all the actors in the movie, but suffice to say they are all really very good and lend total believability throughout the whole thing. 4 stars, Pedaya Seden for Prevenge. Original, funny, brutal, violent, entertaining, poignant, sad, and at 87 minutes long, it's refreshing to see a movie which edits itself with total discipline and won't keep you in your cinema seat longer than the story needs to. Da iawn, writer, director, star and now mother Alice Lowe. Clearly a very skilled multitasker and somebody to keep your eyes on in the future. I highly recommend going to see Prevenge in the cinema. I think you'll have a fun, interesting, scary time. Nick, Wales in the Movies, hwyl fawr!
24 years just waiting